In the Resident Evil universe, the monsters are absolutely terrifying, and they're always the result of completely unhinged bioweapon experiments. All it takes is one rogue strain escaping the lab, and humanity gets turned into a horde of bloodthirsty abominations. And in Resident Evil 9, that monster ecosystem has been massively expanded. New variants are showing up left and right, revealing mutations that are somehow even more horrifying. But behind all of it, the familiar fingerprints of the T-virus are still there. Secret research projects and catastrophes brought on entirely by human greed and madness. In this video, we're going to break down every single creature in Resident Evil 9, digging into their origins, how they mutated, and why exactly they've become such nightmarish abominations. All right, everyone, buckle up and hold on tight. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, because we're about to crack open the biological dossier of the creatures in Resident Evil 9. First up, we're talking about the zombies, the iconic symbols of the entire Resident Evil universe, and the very first creatures born from the T-virus. Nearly 35 years ago, Dr. James Marcus's experiments gave birth to the T-virus, and when a human host gets infected, it produces soulless, bloodthirsty undead. Fast forward to 2026, a former Umbrella researcher cuts a deal with The Connection, a bioweapon manufacturing organization. They fund Victor to continue his T-virus research. Victor Gideon keeps chasing Lord Spencer's vision about transferring consciousness through blood, because the T-virus mutations can trigger abnormal reactions inside the human body, fundamentally altering their bloodstream. And this could be the next step for humanity to ascend to the status of a god. They would never truly die, even as their flesh decayed. Just inject their blood into a new host, and they live on forever. Victor Gideon exploited his medical center to run experiments on patients using T-virus-laced plasma combined with recombinant DNA to create the T-virus strain, an enhanced mutation of the original formula. When someone gets infected with this strain, they mostly turn into zombies. But scarier than the old version, the virus enters the blood through a bite wound or a direct injection. It floods through the circulatory system and takes root in the brain, stimulating hormones. Adrenaline spikes violently. The heart pounds hard, blowing out blood vessels. And that's exactly why. The host's eyes, nose, and mouth bleed, with hemorrhaging under the skin. The transformation happens fast, within just 1 to 2 minutes, until the host is completely taken over by the virus. The host is now driven by an insatiable hunger and extreme aggression. What's unique about the T-virus strain is that it leaves behind fragments of the host's memories. Specifically, they become obsessed with whatever they were thinking about or doing at the exact moment of infection. Like a zombie doctor who still wants to perform surgery with a bone saw, or female janitors absolutely fixated on mopping the floor. The more blood they see, the more frantically they scrub and clean. I have to wonder, if someone gets infected while they're, in the middle of something, what happens then? I'll just let your imagination run with that one. Personally, I'm thinking the one doing the stabbing might be fine, but the one getting stabbed? Rough night. In some rare cases, zombies have shown they retain a level of awareness, but they simply cannot control their own bodies. A prime example: a female staff member with a severed arm lunged toward Grace in a ravenous frenzy. But when she was put down, she whispered, "I'm sorry," which tells us the virus never fully extinguishes the host's consciousness, even though they shuffle around slow and heavy. The moment they spot prey, zombies turn absolutely feral, charging straight at their target with lethal fury. Once they latch onto a target, they will never let go. A zombie's grip is like an iron vice, crushing down on the victim, and with pure primal instinct, they go straight for the most lethal spots on the body, especially the throat. A single bite can shred an artery and end a victim instantly. Zombie saliva is absolutely loaded with virus. If a single bite doesn't kill the victim, the virus will finish the job, turning the victim into a zombie within mere minutes. Now, some of you are probably wondering why Grace gets bitten, but shows zero signs of infection. Well, even back in the early days of T-virus research, scientists discovered that roughly 10% of the population has complete natural immunity to this strain, meaning even with direct exposure, their body simply refuses to turn. And Grace is one of those incredibly rare individuals who carries that natural immunity. T-virus hosts also have absurd resilience and vitality. Head trauma, even direct shots to the skull, or even through the brain, isn't always enough to put them down. Only when the brain stem and its connection to the nervous system is completely destroyed, or when the body's functions exceed their absolute breaking point, will they finally stay down. The key upgrade with the T-virus strain is that it doesn't cause host necrosis. Instead, it just controls the host and can actually reactivate the circulatory system to reanimate freshly dead corpses that are still intact. On top of that, there are two particularly unique zombie individuals: the singing duo, Eileen Zimmerson and Selena Corey. Both were former patients at Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center. Selena was a young, beautiful singer, diagnosed with a personality disorder, desperate to always be the center of attention, and expressing her emotions in extreme, dramatic ways. After getting infected, she retained fragments of her old habits, wandering around near the bar area, in her white dress, walking and humming familiar melodies, in her still sweet singing voice. Eileen Zimmerson was an older singer. During her treatment at the care center, doctors performed surgery on her and severed several of her nerve pathways. Those procedures left Eileen with similar psychological disturbances to Selena, an obsessive belief that she was the main character, and an overwhelming craving to be the center of attention from everyone around her. When the virus broke free and spread through the center, both of them got infected and turned into zombies. However, instead of mindlessly shambling like other undead, Eileen and Selena retained the remnants of their performer instincts. They roamed the hallways, gliding slowly and singing their eerie death melodies. Once they spot a target, they scream to agitate nearby zombies into a frenzy, or if they get their hands on Grace, they'll let out a devastating shriek that ruptures blood vessels, killing the victim on the spot. But it's not just the new generation zombies at the care center. When Leon steps into the ruins of Raccoon City, what's shocking is that those infected 28 years ago are still there. You'd think they'd be dead from starvation by now, but nope. Turns out these Generation 9 zombies were infected by the connection with a new T-virus mutant strain, giving them enhanced adaptability and far greater endurance for the purpose of testing and data collection, as well as to keep any curious intruders from ever setting foot in Raccoon City. Fundamentally, these Gen 9 zombies share many of the same traits as the new undead at the care center. However, due to prolonged starvation, their bodies have gradually dried out. Even so, their bones and muscle tissue remain dense and rock solid. The circulatory system has been restructured to keep the body functional. That's why when you shoot them in the body, these Gen 9 zombies still bleed fresh red blood. To survive in a food-scarce environment, they frequently attack and cannibalize each other, while others burrow deep underground, entering a dormant state. Like hibernating bears, the moment a human enters their territory, they erupt out of the ground and launch themselves at their prey, even after years of starvation. These zombies are still an enormous threat, and the most dangerous among all zombie variants are the ones who used to be Bisei soldiers. Even after being mutated by the virus, fragments of their combat muscle memory remain intact, which is why these things can still use firearms and even heavy weapons to engage targets. Deep inside the ARC facility, there's a zombie variant with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie. There's a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie. There's a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body. There's a zombie with a completely pale white body, covered in surgical scarring. I believe these are hosts that were being upgraded into tyrants. The improved version, designated as the T501. Taking down this new generation of zombies is absolutely not easy. They have incredible durability, and when they go down, an even more terrifying process begins. Death isn't always the end for T-virus hosts when an infected host is dropped, but the head remains relatively intact. The virus can trigger one final mutation phase. At this point, the virus surges in overdrive as a survival response, forcing the body to restructure itself in an incredibly short time. Cells undergo explosive mutation and flood into the head region, where viral concentration is at its peak. The tissue growth is so violent the body convulses, shattering the skull and forcing the brain mass outward. The mouth cavity expands and sprouts rows of razor-sharp teeth. The jaw distends wide enough to crush a victim's entire face, or deliver one fatal, skull-cracking bite. This zim is called the blister head. This cutting way, and we're going to talk about now it might look blind, but actually, there are at least 3 small ocular nodes on its head, helping it track and lock onto prey. At this stage, the blister head demands enormous amounts of energy to sustain its mutation process, which is why they're extremely aggressive and move terrifyingly fast when it locks onto a target. The blister head launches itself like a predatory animal. Its movement path is completely unpredictable, and it gets worse. It can leap high into the air and pounce directly on top of its prey, with a bite force powerful enough to rip through anything in its path. This is still one of the hardest zombie variants to kill. High speed and incredible regeneration means a single headshot may not be enough to put this thing down. Even when critically injured, the blister head keeps pushing forward, hunting for fresh flesh to regenerate its body. In rare cases, depending on the host, and if the blister head feeds enough, the mutation spreads outward to the entire body. Protein is metabolized into dense, bulging muscle bundles, thick and powerful, while the skin also thickens dramatically, capable of withstanding bullets. To maintain that colossal physique, orange pus-filled tumors start forming on the chest, the abdomen, and the back. These function like secondary hearts, pumping nutrients through massive arterial veins that wrap around the body. Claws grow long and razor sharp. Every swipe is like getting hit by a full-force bear strike, capable of tearing flesh right off the bone. This fully evolved form is known as the blisterborn. If you look closely, this creature shares quite a few visual similarities with the bloater mutation from the Last of Us universe. Same massive frame, thick, armored skin, and the ability to produce chemical compounds around itself. The most dangerous thing about the blisterborn is those pus-filled tumors. When they rupture, they release viral saturated fluid at an extremely high concentration, capable of triggering mutations in other infected hosts nearby, whether they're still alive or already dead. This creates a chain reaction, rapidly spawning an entire swarm of blister heads. On top of that, it can also spew out a large volume of corrosive fluid that destroys anything it touches. To take down this monstrosity, you need to destroy all of those orange tumors, because those are literally its hearts. And honestly, this is going to be an absolute nightmare fight for Leon, even with all his years of combat experience, fighting bioweapons of all kinds. He's going to have a seriously hard time with this one. There are 2 effective methods to stop this mutation. First, completely destroy the host's head, blow it apart, or sever it cleanly before the restructuring process can even start. And the second method is far more effective. Use a serum containing hemolytic poison, just 1 injection into a T-virus strain host, and this compound will trigger a chain reaction in the blood cells, causing the entire body to explode like a balloon, leaving nothing but shredded flesh and bone fragments, completely obliterating the host. Deep within the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center exists a creature entirely different from the zombie horde, a being that lurks in the shadows, moving across ceilings and through ventilation shafts, hunting anyone unfortunate enough to wander into its territory. But the scariest part isn't the horrifying physical form, it's the true identity of this creature. Because before it became a monster, it was just a child. Her name was Marie. To understand what happened, we have to go back to the aftermath of Umbrella's collapse and the destruction of Raccoon City. At that time, the Connection discovered ARC, a secret research facility hidden beneath the Raccoon City orphanage, still fully operational. This place housed massive amounts of viral research data from Umbrella, and most importantly, Elpis, protected by an anti-intrusion mechanism that would self-destruct if accessed incorrectly. After digging through Spencer's documents, the Connection realized that Grace Ashcroft might be the very key to unlocking Elpis. To continue the research, they hired Victor Gideon and provided him with medical records, as well as Grace's genetic data. Victor Gideon believed Grace's genetics, a child that Spencer had entrusted to Alyssa years earlier, was the missing piece to stabilize the T-virus strain mutation and unlock the mystery of Elpis. Therefore, Grace's clones were considered ideal hosts, capable of enduring the toxicity of the virus, while still retaining their consciousness. At Rhodes Hill, a brutal protocol was in place. Patients with no family and no guardian, and no one who would notice if they disappeared, were forcibly injected with the T-virus strain. BSD hosts were thrown into industrial grinders, their blood harvested to continue fueling the experiments. Across many years, countless brutal experiments took place, and by 2026, a refined serum, extracted from 500 liters of blood. From 115 infected patients was injected into Marie, the individual designated as subject 170. Initial observations showed Marie's physical endurance improved significantly after the serum injection for a brief period. The experiment seemed to be producing positive results. However, subsequent readings showed that the girl's body still wasn't hitting the targets that Victor Gideon needed. Meanwhile, Marie began showing signs of severe psychological instability. Shortly after, she punched through the wall of her cell and escaped from the containment area. What happened next? No one witnessed firsthand, but from that moment on, a creature began appearing in the ventilation system and in the dark corridors of the care center. Staff simply called it the girl. Later, this creature became known by another name, based on a book found inside the facility, the Shadow Ghost. This creature stands nearly 6 feet 6, with a skeletal frame reinforced with dense tissue, wrapped in powerful, hardened muscle. The T-virus caused an extreme, accelerated aging effect, giving the Shadow Ghost the appearance of a white-haired old woman, wearing a tattered old dress, eyes protruding fully from the socket, giving it exceptional vision in total darkness, and a jaw that can open wide enough to clamp entirely around. An adult human's head, elongated arms with razor-sharp claws, while the legs have mutated, like those of a predatory wolf. The Shadow Ghost typically hides in the dark, moving through ventilation ducts and across ceilings, silently hunting anyone who dares enter its domain. This creature is controlled by a horrifying hunger. It has a habit of biting the head off its victim first, leaving the torso behind, to feed on later if the hunger still hasn't been satisfied. Having adapted to the T-virus strain, the Shadow Ghost's regeneration ability is absolutely insane. Even when a large portion of the skull is blown apart, bone tissue and muscle flesh can still recover within a short time, as long as there's food available and shadows to hide in. Almost nothing can permanently destroy this thing, which is exactly why a large number of care center staff lost their lives. Eventually, they were forced to devise a plan to corner the creature and eliminate it. The Shadow Ghost's critical weakness is light. Even standard electric light can cause severe damage to its skin, burning and decomposing the tissue. This weakness is also why the Shadow Ghost can never become a fully functional bioweapon. In truth, it's simply an unintended mutation, completely contrary to Victor Gideon's original objective, ultimately, to protect herself and Emily. Grace is forced to open the basement hatch, letting sunlight flood in, incinerating this monster for good. But Marie's story still has one detail that lingers. Alongside Marie, there was another test subject, Emily. Designated subject 171. She also received the serum injection, but showed no significant signs of mutation and appeared to be tolerating the virus's toxicity based on the containment layout, with 2 cells placed side by side. I believe Marie and Emily were the 2 kids who became close friends during their time imprisoned at the care center. Marie loved dolls. An old doll still sat in her abandoned cell, and in the Shadow Ghost's lair below the containment block, identical dolls were piled everywhere. Emily, on the other hand, loved reading. Despite being blind, she could read Braille and tell stories to Marie in the cell next door. Perhaps those were the rare few moments where these 2 kids actually got to live like normal children. And that's why, even after her body twisted into a monster, the Shadow Ghost still saw Emily as her one and only friend in one heartbreaking moment. While chasing Grace and Emily in an elevator, the Shadow Ghost said something devastatingly simple. The words of a child just looking for someone to play with. Because, for Marie, all she ever really wanted was probably just to be back next to Emily and keep playing, a game that the 2 of them never got to finish. Emily is also one of the hosts of the T-virus strain mutation. After sustaining critical injuries and dying, the virus inside her body immediately triggered the mutation phase. The transformation was violent, happening in mere minutes. Bones and muscle tissue erupted outward, completely restructuring Emily's previously small, fragile body. When the process finished, what remained was a tall, grotesquely asymmetrical creature. One arm grew monstrously oversized, with razor claws built for hunting, a mouthful of jagged, uneven fangs, designed purely for tearing through raw flesh. The chest cavity left the beating heart exposed, becoming the creature's critical weak point through Emily's mutated form. It's clear the experiment was a total failure by any bioweapon standard. This thing is simply a defective product, unstable, exposed, vulnerable, and can be taken down relatively easily. Going back to the 1990s, there were many children used as experiment subjects at research facilities. Linked to Umbrella, the virus drove them into madness. Their bodies gained near-perfect regeneration, making them virtually indestructible. Those creatures were nearly impossible to permanently kill, and in the end, They killed every single staff member at the orphanage. After that incident, experiments on children did not stop for years to come. Hundreds of cloned children continued to be created and entered into research programs connected to Umbrella and the Connection. Children who were injected, implanted, and surgically modified, forced to endure extreme physical trauma and severe psychological damage when their bodies no longer held any research value. Those bodies were disposed of like biological waste. Emily was the final test subject in a line of 171 cloned children. In this program, in an old photograph, Oscar Spencer sits surrounded by a group of children, smiling brightly, but years later, those very same children became the subjects of Umbrella's viral experiments. Eventually, Spencer claimed to have created Elpis, a compound capable of neutralizing any virus, according to him. It was his way of atoning for the sins of the past. Elpis is what saved Emily. Her body gradually stabilized, the monster form began to dissolve, and Emily returned to the body of a normal child. Even her blindness was completely cured. Sounds like a happy ending, doesn't it? But the real question still hangs in the air. Is Elpis a genuine cure for humanity, or just another leash, created by the same man who unleashed viral catastrophe on the world in the first place? And that's a wrap, everyone. We've just broken down the creatures of Resident Evil 9. From the familiar shambling zombies to nightmare mutations like the Blisterhead and the Shadow Ghost. In the next episode, we'll keep digging into the even scarier creatures in Resident Evil 9, the ones that truly sit at the top of this entire mutation chain. If you enjoyed this kind of breakdown video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to show your support. That support goes a long way in keeping this going and helping bring you even more quality content. Thanks for sticking around to the end. See you in the next Mutation Dossier.